Hope everyone's having a good Thursday so far. It is getting a little bit warmer than last week, so that's good. Maybe we'll get a last stretch of sunshine this weekend. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. We do have some people joining in. My name is Mashroor Chaudhry, and I'm the manager of sales and recruitment for the Chang School. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the land upon which Toronto Metropolitan University is built. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I want to pay my respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, and ancestors who stewarded and cared for the nature and people who lived on the land where TMU is located today. At the university, we made a deep and long-lasting commitment to the truth and reconciliation. I invite you to learn more about this work online. Now I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's session. Your microphone is muted throughout the event so as not to disturb other attendees or the presenters. For the hearing impaired, we have automated captioning available, which you can access by activating it in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You will have the opportunity to submit questions by typing your questions into the question box in the control panel. And you may send in your questions anytime during the session. We'll be answering them towards the end. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speakers for today, Kelvin Kong and Meg Taylor, Academic Coordinator for the Certificate at the Chang School, Aaron Zacharias, student of the certificate, and Lee Nash, publisher at the Assembly Press. Megan Calvin will now provide a brief overview of the certificate and how it can help you develop the skills you need to build your career. All right, over to you.
We're going to begin with some quick facts about the program. It is totally online, which makes it accessible to anyone, not only across Canada, from sea to sea to sea, but around the world. And we do have students from, who are often Canadians or Americans who are living in Europe or Australia or Asia who take our courses. Our requirements: 8 39-hour courses, 2 are required, 6 are electives, and you can combine 2 half-term courses to make up a full credit. We'll go into that later. Length typically is 1 to 2 years, but if you're working full-time, you might want to take the 5-year maximum time span, take it slow. And the cost does vary depending on how many half-term courses you take. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Trends in the industry. We're constantly updating our courses and introducing new courses. I'm going to give you a couple examples of that. And also the content of the courses. And anyone can jump in. Anyone else who is a panelist, please jump in with your experience of some of these courses or trends. 2 of the courses we introduced recently, and just in the past few years, audiobook publishing and production. That is a trend in the industry that continues to grow. Another one is accessible publishing and production. Accessibility is a big issue right across all media, but we're quite sensitive to that. And we have a new and very popular course that's developed to build expertise in supporting print-disabled readers. Digital publishing and production, we developed a number of years ago, but we are constantly updating that course. And it provides hands-on training for digital publishing and digital marketing. There are lots of new jobs in that area. And all courses, of course, it goes without saying, but I will say it, address the increasing demand for diverse authors and professionals in publishing. Book publishing in Canada, here's just a snapshot of what we, well, first of all, I want to say that it's a very big field, and it's not just traditional book publishing that we train you for, but you may end up in corporate communications, for example, or working at a research institute that anywhere that produces publications. But if we're looking at book publishing, we have children's publishing, 30%. The largest part of the pie is adult trade publishing, adult consumer, here 40%. Scholarly and publishing, scholarly and professional publishing, 8.7%. It's a smaller market, but if this is something you're interested in, you want to focus on, we can train you for that. Ebooks, 11.8%, that is mostly in trade publishing, but also in educational publishing. The ebooks are used widely. That is a format rather than a type of publishing. Educational publishing, 6.9%, and other, that would include all kinds of publishing programs. Okay, we can look at the next one. The courses we offer, we have over 20 courses. There's a lot to choose from editing to sales and marketing, publicity. You can see the offerings on the screen there. Two very specialized things you can see on the right: audiobooks, indexing, proofreading, and so on. Once you take the overview courses, even before you take the overview courses, when you come into the program, you might have decided that you want to specialize in editing. But in the overview course, you may quite likely find that you have a facility for or interest in book design or production. And we have courses, specialized courses, that train you on a professional level to go into any of those roles. Okay, the next slide, please. So here are some of the career path options that you have. Of course, we'll start with book publishing, but that's very broad: trade, educational, scholarly, and reference publishing. And then literary magazine and academic journal publishing, and then publishing for corporate, nonprofit, and government communication. That's very broad. So these skills are transferable to any of these sectors in the industry. And roles, you can work in business, editorial, sales. Often you might enter where the jobs are. You might enter in digital publishing or digital marketing or publicity, and then come back to us for more training and move into editorial. Once you're in publishing, it's a fairly, it's not a small world, but we do tend to know each other. And once you do good work within publishing, you can move from one role to another, as long as you have the training. Okay, the next. Okay, these are the requirements. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions about this. As I mentioned before, the two overview courses, this trade publishing and educational publishing, give you a really clear sense of the whole industry. And then you choose to specialize in the following 6 courses. And any one of those can be made up of 2 half-term courses. Next slide, please. Okay, and I see that we just have Mashroor there. Could we display our contact information, please? Perhaps not. Okay.
We'll display that during the Q&A session.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we'll
Okay.
share that out too.
Great.
Thank you so much, Meg. That was really great. Lots of insights for all of our attendees and for everybody to see exactly, you know, what's involved in the certificate and some of the trends. So thank you a lot for sharing that. We'll now pass it over to Aaron, who's been a student of the certificate, and over to you, Aaron.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me today. This is a cool experience. To begin, I'll just give a brief introduction of myself. I actually live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, so I took this course obviously through distance. And currently I work as a real estate photographer, a staff writer, and I freelance write for a few different other platforms as well. So I initially, actually, I'll go back a little bit further. I've been wanting to go into publishing for about 10 years. It took me 8 years to actually pull the trigger and apply and register for these courses, which I started in 2022. So I finished the program in a year and a half, or just a little bit more than that. So under the 2 years. I did everything from home. So my experience, I've been to secondary school after high school once already, and it was in class. This was a completely different experience for me doing it from home, because I mean, at home, there are so many distractions, and I work from home already. So I was working and doing school at home. You spend a lot of time at home, and that can drive you crazy a little bit. So it took me about, after my first term, I got used to it, to the challenge of being at home all the time, and just adapting to how it was doing school from home and sitting on a chair for 5, 6, 7 hours a day. So it was interesting, but I pulled through it, obviously. My motivation for going into publishing was, honestly, I've been writing and reading my entire life for the most part, and wanting to work in the publishing space for me came down to creativity, and being in a creative space, which I believe publishing is. I myself am naturally drawn to creativity and imagination, and the opportunities that I envisioned in publishing were working with authors, and that meant working with authors' creativity and their imagination, and how they create ideas, and how they create characters for books, and how they formulate stories. And in my head, I wanted to work with authors in developing their stories and getting their books published, due to the fact that I just wanted to engage with other people's creativity. I love that. I love that idea. And as a writer myself, I would say 90% of my writing is focused in the sports world, but I also do cover and write other topics as well, which gives me a different space and a different outlet to bring out my own creativity. Because with sports, you're kind of subjugated and only be able to focus on certain things, whereas other areas you can expand, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go into publishing. And with most people, I went in wanting to focus on the editorial side, not necessarily copy or proofreading, but I wanted to, again, work with authors, so manuscript evaluations and working with their writings. But after the first term, my horizons expanded a bit, and my interest grew out of editorial and into other areas. So I took a few more courses than the 6 electives and the 8 and the 2 required. So I think overall I took about 10 courses or maybe 11 courses, because I just wanted to learn in different areas. So I went in with an idea, and I came out with options that I was not previously interested in. So those are what I'm pursuing now. And I guess just to close this 5 minutes off here, there were, in terms of my experience itself, there were some positive and negative aspects of the program. But overall, it was a good learning experience. To be honest, I thought, I mean, a certificate isn't a bachelor or a major. So not to say that my standards were low, but I came out learning a lot more than what I initially thought that I would. So I was very pleased with that. The positives outweighed the negatives, which was good. I feel like I would have had a different outlook on the program if it were vice versa. But I would say that my favorite parts or the most impactful parts of the course itself or programs itself were the writing and research. I loved the assignments. Kelvin, you were one of my instructors, and you had a lot of assignments in our course that I really enjoyed because it gave me the ability to write and to research, which is something that I enjoy doing. So the assignments were definitely, I guess, the biggest highlight of the workload. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet classmates like face to face. You know, you could communicate with them through the chats and through group projects and such. So it was interesting to get to know people that way, which is something that I'm not used to. I'm a very social person physically, like face to face in person. So it was a little bit different trying to communicate and getting to know people online. But overall, it was a great program. I will admit I don't currently have a directly publishing related job at the moment, but I'm still certainly working towards that. And I'm still writing, which is, I mean, it's been my whole life. So I guess you could relate writing to publishing indirectly in different ways. But yeah, I think all of the courses I enjoyed. I think just Meg, you mentioned the digital part. I took the digital one of the digital courses, which involved HTML coding and all the back computer stuff. And that was maybe a mistake on my part. I shouldn't have done that. That was the most challenging course, and it was frustrating too. I'm not discouraging anyone from taking the course. If that's your thing, then go for it. But for me, that course was 3 months, and I felt like it was a year. It was very not my thing. But yeah, again, overall, to reiterate, it was a good experience, and I definitely recommend the program, especially if you want to just learn about publishing in the different areas. And if you go into the program with a focus on a specific area, be prepared to have that crash and burn a little bit, and your interests are going to expand to another area. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing that perspective from the student side and your experiences, right? I know you had a mixed bag, but I'm really happy that you know, the positives outweighed the others. And yeah, you're writing in sports right now, which is, you know, I love sports, so you know, love to hear that. And yeah, thank you again for sharing those insights. I know there might have been anything else that Kelvin, did you want to add to this? I know Aaron was talking about some of the courses that he had with you. But yeah, before we go ahead and pass it over to Lee.
I don't really have anything to add. Aaron was great students. And you know, he did talk about, you know, how different an environment it is with online and in person, in the sense that, you know, the engagement is not the same. You don't get to, see your classmates. You don't really get to engage with them or talk to them. It's obviously, you know, that's a limitation of how the way courses work when it's online delivered. But you know, we do try to, in our program, we do try to account for that in different ways, primarily by having lots of student discussions on the discussion board. It's not the same as, you know, a live face-to-face, but it is the closest thing we have. And you know, for the record, Aaron was fantastic in my course in terms of participating and talking to other people. So you know, I hope that it's not, again, not the same as networking in class, but you know, we hope that, you know, we got the best experience, the best networking experience we can provide out of it. But again, different formats, you're gonna run into different challenges.
Awesome, thank you. There we go, right? More great things about you, Aaron. So we just wanted to hear that coming from Kelvin too. Well, now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and she's a poet, publisher, and also is working at the Assembly Press as a publisher. It's over to you. It's Lee Nash.
Hello, thanks for having me. So yes, I am the publisher of Assembly Press, which is a brand new, I've been saying we're Canada's newest publishing company until somebody corrects me. So I'm going to hold on to that as long as I can. I've also served as publisher for House of Anansi Press and Invisible Publishing. I've worked for Coach House Books and a number of other small publishers. I've taught book publishing courses at York and Humber College. I've served on boards of directors for the Association of Canadian Publishers and eBound Canada. I'm one of those people who actually loves coding ebooks. We're weird, I know, but it's such a useful skill. And I'm even an author on hiatus. Yes, I have one poetry collection. That's all there is for now. I've done just about every job there is to do in a publishing house, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. So that includes everything from acquiring and editing to bookkeeping, typesetting, sales, shipping, all of it. So what that means is that publishing has actually ruined me for just about any other job I could ever have because of the sheer variety of work that I get to do. I haven't been bored in over a decade. So if boredom is your kryptonite, you're in the right spot. My big secret is that I did not go to publishing school. I wish I had, actually. It would have made such a difference in terms of baseline knowledge, especially. I wouldn't have had to run to my desk to Google things after meetings for fear of looking like I didn't know what I was doing. And I think it's just such a great way to be able to really get a leg up in the industry. So I started working in publishing in my late 20s. I'd done an undergrad and an MFA. I worked in nonprofit healthcare before switching careers. And so much of my previous job experience was transferable into publishing, especially my entry-level gig, and the inverse is true. You really need a well-rounded skill set to succeed here. And I think, you learn tons in this program that'll help you like learn the industry inside out kind of thing. There's tons of jobs, and I think, like as Meg already highlighted, there's tons of jobs within the industry of all different kinds, like outside the editorial spectrum. But there's also, like, honestly, the business side of publishing is among the most fascinating. When I learned about scouts, Kelvin can talk about this. I wish I could go and do it all over again and be a scout. I think it's the best job. It's the same as a sports scout, but you get to read books and matchmake. In terms of trends too in publishing, we're kind of trend resistant. That's kind of a nice thing about old school media. They don't really move in the same way. New publishing companies are starting up all the time, and they're really trying to challenge the status quo and do things differently, support authors in different ways, make the industry a little bit more accessible and diverse, which is great. We need more voices and more perspectives on the publishing side just as much as we do on the writer side. They kind of feed into each other. One of the things about publishing, it's really rare for new genres to totally come out of nowhere, but marketing is the name of the game. There's always new ways to market and repackage and kind of show things in that way. Genre is having such a great resurgence. So if you're a genre reader, great spot to be. We're way ahead here in Canada. This is kind of the fun thing on the accessibility front because we've had such good government investment and funding. So there's actually lots of jobs on that side, particularly around making ebooks. It's actually a great way for people to get into the industry and get work if you do have any of that technical aptitude. New independent bookstores are opening all the time. It's great. So there's growth happening. We're a little bit behind the US always in terms of where things are with independent bookstores and independent presses, which is not a bad thing. But our cycle is on the upswing, which is great. So, I know I said old school media, but I mean old school in terms of stable. There's still lots of really cool innovations happening, and I hope you'll all be part of it one day.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Lee. I love the fact how you mentioned it's trend resistant. I think I'm going to steal that that term and use that, because that's really cool to hear. And also really good to hear about the funding that that Canada receives. I did visit, in terms of old school bookstores, the Powell's bookstore in
Oh
Portland.
yeah,
Yeah,
Powell's is great.
it was massive, and yeah, it was really cool just to see that. But yeah, just to bring it back, thank you again for your insights and for joining us for this.
Thanks.
We'll now open it up for Q&A for our attendees. So yeah, I urge you to just go into that box, the Q&A box, and questions. And while we wait for some questions, we did have some that were sent to us via email from some of the students. One of those is what networking avenues would be available for someone outside of Canada, US? Are there any remote networking options available? So maybe Meg or Kelvin, if you have any insights on that.
Kelvin, why don't you take this one?
I'm sorry, I got completely distracted. Would you mind repeating the question, Mishra?
Absolutely. What networking avenues would be available for someone outside of Canada? But we can also maybe touch on what networking avenues are available in general.
Outside of North America, I mean, the issue is this program is based in Canada, and sadly, we are, as the school is, in Toronto. So there aren't a lot of opportunities, but again, we do try to encourage student engagement within the courses. And that is not to say that there are no future, we're not looking into this, and that is not to say that we're not looking into this, and we are trying to figure out how we can open it up, opportunities for people outside of Toronto to engage in the same, if not similar, similar, if not the same kind of networking that, Toronto-based students get, because it is, again, we are in this program, we do try to address as many barriers as possible, and we do recognize this is a very tangible barrier. I would say though, given the rise of, it's not rise, but given the peak, sorry, given the prominence of social media, and this is something that I recommend to my students all the time in my class, whether they're based in Toronto or outside of Toronto, outside of Canada. Publishers do have social, a lot of publishers have social media presences. A lot of people in publishing have social media presences on Facebook, Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter, on Instagram. And I would recommend that, you follow people follow those people, those publishing professionals on social media, and, don't bombard them with questions about, how to get a job, but, you will find that people have similar interests to you, and you engage them on those things. And that does help break the ice. And, again, not the same as a face-to-face, drinks thing, but it does break the ice, and it does, put their name in their minds. When I joined social media, I started connecting with a lot of people in publishing. And when I started meeting them at face-to-face events, the ice was broken, and it wasn't so much a, hey, nice to meet you, with all that awkwardness, and more like a, oh, hey, there you are. There was familiarity. So it's a very, very long-winded answer, I realize, but I would recommend, using what is available to you instead of focusing on what's not available.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelvin. Meg, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, just depending on where you are in the world. The question was outside of Canada, right? How do you network? So, for example, if it's Japan, I am in touch with an organization there. It's called the Society of Writers, Editors, and Translators. They've been around since 1980. I was one of the founders, and it's an incredible organization. So if you're in Japan, we're dealing with Japanese clients. They are an incredible network that you can you join for something like $50, and everything's open to you. So and there's a lot of free stuff. You can just log onto their website. So it depends on the country where you are, and if you want to contact me afterwards with specific questions about, I'm in France and I need help, we're happy to help. I might not know the answer, but I might know who knows the answer to that. So.
Sweet. Thank you for that. Next question is about editing, and it's technical editing covered in any of the editing courses?
Technical editing. So scholarly and reference editing, I assume, is what is referred to here. And yes, it is part of the educational publishing overview. And then we also have a half-term course that specializes in scholarly and reference publishing, but primarily scholarly. So I'm not sure, we don't train you to edit nursing textbooks, for example, specifically, but we do train you in how to approach a more technical subject. And to work in those areas, you want to have a background, an undergraduate background at least, if not a graduate degree in that area.
Great. Thank you, Meg. This next question is from Peyton. Thank you for your question. How are students assessed? Projects, essays, tests, etc.?
Yes. The thing is, different courses have different focuses, and the assignments will be will be appropriate to the subject matter. So I can tell you most of the courses in our program don't have exams. Our program comes at the courses from an experiential perspective. So we try to give you assignments based on work that you will do on the job. So for example, my course, we have an assignment that would put you within the position of someone who's doing a job that the course is based on, which is for us literary rights management, and ask you, how would you handle dealing with books in this manner? How would you sell the rights to this in this manner? I know I'm using a lot of words that may not make sense until you take in the program, but that's another reason you'll have to take the program. Yeah, so to answer your question, our assignments are based on real, as much as possible on real world practices.
Awesome.
I'll just add one thing. We also have built into the online modules all kinds of self-tests and quizzes that are not marked. It's just a way for you to test yourself as you go. Erin, do you have anything to add to this? Because you've recently taken courses with us. Any comments on assignments or these little quizzes that are built in?
Yeah, to reiterate something that Kelvin talked about the exams, I was surprised that there were not. I think out of all the courses I took, I only had 4 exams, and they were editing related, specifically editing related. And everything else was final assignments or final projects, which I prefer, because you're in that way you're given a lot more room, whereas an exam you answer this question, answer this question, answer this question. A final project, you have space to explore. You have space to be creative. I enjoyed that. And again, he also mentioned it's related to what you would be doing on the actual job. And I also enjoyed that too, because it forced you to put yourself in a position, well, what would I do here if I were actually in this position? So it forces you to think, expand critical thinking. And again, I've said this 1,000 times already, but be creative. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. The exams, I found, I don't know if I learned a whole lot from the exams, because you move on from one question so quickly, you don't get to ponder or think about anything beforehand. That's my experience anyways. But for me, I'm a hands-on person. I will learn something a lot more if I'm doing it physically. And final projects and final assignments were the best avenue for me to actually gain knowledge and learn technically on the job, so to speak. So
Yeah, that's what we aim. Yeah, that's what we aim to do with our courses and our programs. The thing is, this certificate is a for the most part, this certificate is professional training, which will also answer another question that's in the list of, whether the courses are practical or theory based. It is practical for the first and foremost. We do our courses train you to do the job. We will talk about things like, history and market trends, but those are context for you to understand how the industry works today. So again, with the assignments, like for example, my course, the course that I co-developed with my co-instructor and co-developer, we had an exam for about half the time that the course ran. We decided, we had an exam, and then we decided, you know what, we're just not going to do the exam anymore, because exactly for the reasons that Aaron pointed out, you don't learn anything from an exam, especially since this is practical, job training. An exam's not going to really help you learn anything. We'd rather have you apply your thinking so that you can actually exercise, those skills you will need on the job. So you'll find that a lot of the courses, again, don't have exams. And like Aaron said, a lot of the editing courses some of the editing courses do have exams. That's probably because with editing, there's more of and Meg can answer this better than I do, probably more of a standardized knowledge base that you would need about, where to put semicolons and other
Right.
standards.
I'll just jump in. So the higher level editing courses like substantive editing, of course, we don't have an exam for the reason that we're discussing. You're working with manuscripts, you're preparing, you're revising a table of contents in light of changes you've made to a 70,000 word manuscript. I mean, you're not doing an exam for that course. For a copy editing course or proofreading course, it is more appropriate. There is a right and wrong answer, but not for stylistic editing. So, there are many answers for stylistic editing. So, it really depends on what level of editorial work you're doing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that, both Meg and Kelvin, and also for Aaron for chiming in. This next question is for Lee. It's from Levine. Thank you for your question, Levine. And so the question is, how did you overcome challenges switching industries from nonprofit healthcare to publishing? I'm on the same path, but I find that the lack of industry experience is difficult to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably true for anybody switching careers. I think the biggest thing is to focus on the similarities. So for me, I'd done a lot of administrative and communications work as part of I think I started as an admin assistant for a professional association. And by really playing up the skills that I got there on my resume, that was half of it. The other half was volunteer experience. I spent some of the best advice I got out of my undergrad creative writing degree was to volunteer. And I'm not talking about free labor. I'm talking about volunteer work in exchange for you getting something, which might be a letter of reference, networking. That's a great way to do networking anywhere you are, is to volunteer for literary festivals or events, offer to run a book table. That's how you'll meet people and get that sort of adjacent industry experience. That's almost, it's really sort of like the practicum side to the education side, and the job experience side, I think.
Super helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I'll jump in for 1 second here, based on what
Yeah.
Lee said about volunteering. It does bring me to something that we didn't discuss, but is a very important part of our program. Volunteer opportunities that we hear about, as well as job and internship opportunities we hear about, are shared with students who are enrolled in the program. When you join the program, within the second week of your first classes, I'll be adding you to a job board that has that contains opportunities for internships, jobs that we hear about or that we find, and also any volunteer opportunities that we're told about. So for example, right now we're advertising volunteer opportunities for things like Word on the Street, which is a literary festival that happens in late September. That's it.
I love that. Thank you, Kelvin. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Volunteering is, I've networked so much through volunteering in different spaces. So definitely encourage people to do that. Next question is from Zermina. Thank you for your question, Zermina. What is the program like for students in Toronto? Are there opportunities for meeting or learning in person?
I'll take this one. It is an online based program, and again, we are, considering different networking opportunities. Oh God, not last year. Yeah, I think it was last year. We did have an event, a networking event with other publishing students. So the Chinese School organized an event where students in the program can come and meet us. And we did one of those. We're looking to do it again. But also as a student living in Toronto, this ties back to what I said about social media. Do follow publishers on social media because there are a lot of book launches happening in the city, and a lot of book events. You have things again, and there's also literary festivals. So as I said, Word on the Street happens in late September. The Toronto International Festival of Authors also happens in September, so you can go see your favorite authors. There's also the Festival of Literary Diversity, which happens during the spring of the year. It's in Brampton. There's a lot of panels. And, the focus is based on diversity in publishing, but you can go to a lot of panels that talk about publishing, but also like a lot of writing. Yeah, and publishers, and the fall season is busiest. So, if you follow independent publishers like Coach House or Book Hug or Woolsack and Wind, they will advertise, events that they're having. Some of them have major launches where they launch multiple authors, and it'll be at a space where there are many other people in publishing. Yeah, and most of these don't require, most of these book launches do not require RSVPs. So, you don't feel the need to register and then show up without, telling anyone, just show up.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, and thanks for mentioning Word on the Street. I will be there. So yeah, I'll encourage everybody to attend. We don't have a lot any more open questions, but we'll take one more that was sent to us before. It's someone who's in a journalism undergrad at TMU. So for someone who's looking to go into publishing, do you think this certificate program would complement a journalism degree?
Yes, you will learn a lot about things like editing and copy editing, which apparently a lot of newsrooms these days do not have, newspapers. I mean, like, given in the past few years, all the copy editor jobs in newsrooms got cut. So pretty much every article that you read will have at least one or two odd typos. That said, I realized I answered a very, very technical and granular aspect of your question. So I'll let Meg talk about.
Well, I would say it's a perfect program for anyone who's in journalism or creative writing or, an English degree, and you're looking for some practical skills. Absolutely. Check us out. Take a course, see what you think.
Yeah.
All right, so I know we have 1 minute left, but yes, there is one last question that maybe we can answer, Kelvin. That's from Michaela.
Oh, did you want me to read out the question, or were you going to read out the question?
Yeah, it's if I take a single course in the fall, can I then apply it to the program later when I decide to sign up for the certificate?
Okay, to answer your question, yes. If you take a single course now, you do not have to register right away. A lot of our students who join do register for the certificate after they enroll in their first course, but that is an option. You can actually register for the certificate at any time up to before you complete your 4th full credits. So as Meg said earlier, the program requires 8 credits for graduation. Provided you register at any time between, before you finish that 4th credit, so before you finish 50% of the program, you can do so. Do note that your certificate GPA for those, those courses that you took before you register, they will not count towards your certificate GPA.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And with that, we will end the Q&A session. And I want to say some closing remarks. So first of all, thank you to our speakers and thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend today's information session. If you're interested in learning more or enrolling in courses related to our certificate, you can visit torontomu.ca/ce/publishing. And if you have any other questions, please contact us at email mash.chaudhry@torontomu.ca or publish@torontomu.ca. And we also have a phone number there that you could call in. You will receive a follow-up email with this presentation, the recording of the session, and a survey within 24 to 48 hours. And once again, on behalf of the Chang School, our presenters and guest speakers, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.